There are a number of tools and technologies, both ancient and modern, that debunk the heliocentric globe model and confirm Earth to be a stationary, level plane, with the sun, moon, and stars revolving over and around. 1. The Antikythera mechanism, astrolabes, and planispheres. One of the most ancient devices that confirms a stationary, geocentric flat Earth is known as the Antikythera mechanism. Discovered in Greece over 100 years ago and dating back to the 2nd century BC, this long-lost technology is now the oldest known analog computer in history. Composed of 37 gears, with teeth ranging from tiny to microscopic, the Antikythera mechanism is a perfect replica of the heavens, showing the exact positions, movements, and alignments of all the celestial bodies. There are gears and indicators for the sun, moon, and each of the planets, all set against the fixed stars, allowing the user to tell the date, time, latitude, predict eclipses, see the moon's phase, and precise position of the sun, moon, planets, and stars for any date in history. This incredible astronomical computer, which can perfectly predict the movements of every object in the cosmos, shockingly, has no gear for the Earth itself. That is because the Antikythera mechanism, as well as all astrolabes and planispheres, are geocentric devices based on a fixed, stationary, central Earth plane over which the sun, moon, stars, and planets revolve. The Earth is not treated as a planet in motion around the sun, as claimed by the heliocentric model, but rather the stage over which the heavenly play is performed. If Earth was really the third planet from the sun, and undergoing all the motions attributed to it by heliocentric dogma, the precision and predictions of these geocentric instruments would be impossible. If heliocentrism were true, there would be modern, updated precision astrolabes and planispheres with added plates for the Earth, showing how it truly behaves as third planet from the sun. In reality, however, to this very day, all astrolabes and planispheres, including the most ancient Antikythera mechanism, are based on the model of a geocentric flat Earth. 2. Theodolites. Theodolites are precision instruments used for accurately measuring horizontal and vertical angles between points, generally used in land surveying, construction, and engineering. They consist of a movable telescope mounted on two perpendicular axes with graduated circles to provide angular readouts. These indicate the exact orientation of the crosshairs and are used to trace the first point sighted through the telescope to subsequent sightings of other points from the same theodolite position. This allows them to measure angles with accuracies down to microradians or seconds of arc. When theodolites are set up at different points along straight canals or lakes, they have repeatedly been shown to be perfectly level, with crosshairs aligning across to the opposite shoreline. If Earth was really a globe 3,959 miles in radius, as claimed, there is an easily measurable amount of curvature, increasing exponentially every mile, that should and would be detected by such precision instruments. In reality, no such curvature is found by theodolites. One of the most famous flat earthers in history, Dr. Samuel Rowbotham, author of Earth Not a Globe, performed several experiments positioning theodolites at equal heights aimed at each other successively, proving the Bedford Canal to be perfectly level over 6 miles, where there should exist over 24 feet of curvature on a globe of given proportions. His experiments at the Bedford Canal caused quite a stir in the scientific community, and thanks to decades of his efforts and activism, the shape of the Earth became a hot topic of debate around the turn of the 20th century. 3. Line lasers and laser levels. Line lasers and laser levels are devices which produce straight, narrow beams of light that will not droop down like a rope or other physical means of measuring. Using boards, mirrors, or other target objects, the laser's height can easily be checked at successive points along a given stretch of land or water in order to determine whether the globe's claimed amount of downward curvature exists or not. Tests have been done, for example, across Lake Balaton in Hungary and Kootenay Lake in British Columbia, confirming the water's surface to be perfectly flat. At Lake Balaton, a green laser was used at night, aiming straight across an expanse of 7 miles, just above the surface of the lake, and hit boards recorded by observers with cameras placed at equal heights on the opposite shore. If Earth was really a globe of given proportions, there should be 32 feet of downward curvature at that distance. At Kootenay Lake, lasers were shot 3 feet above the water from Walker's Landing to Caslow Point, over 14.4 miles away in one experiment, and all the way to Schroeder Creek, 23 miles away in a second. Earth curvature calculators determined that a laser positioned at 3 feet high, 14.4 and 23 miles away, should have target hidden heights of a massive 100 feet and 290 feet respectively. In both cases, however, the lasers were caught by cameras on the opposite shores positioned at the same height. Globe apologists' default defense for anything seen beyond their mythical curvature is blamed on light refraction, or superior mirage. When this really does happen, objects are often lifted well above the horizon and appear to be a hazy replica of themselves. But the idea that every instance of light or objects appearing beyond Earth's alleged curvature can be excused away as simply light refraction or mirage is patently false. 4. Magnetic compasses. Magnetic compasses are navigation tools with directional markings that use a freely spinning, magnetized needle that aligns with Earth's magnetic field and points to magnetic north. A bit of critical thought reveals these to be impossible and nonsensical instruments for use on a globe Earth. They simultaneously point north and south over a flat surface and must be held flat and still to work properly, yet claim to be pinpointing 2 constantly moving geomagnetic poles at opposite ends of a spinning sphere originating from a hypothetical molten metal core. If compass needles were really drawn to the north pole of a globe, the opposing south needle would actually be pointing up and off into outer space. Likewise, observers holding a compass in Antarctica would be at the bottom of a ball, so to show north, the needle would have to point down at their feet. If the so-called South Pole in Antarctica were truly the southern pole of a magnet, observers would be able to walk in a circle with their backs to the South Pole and have their compass needles show north being in front of them in every direction. This feat has never and will never be achieved because the so-called South Pole is simply an arbitrary point along the Antarctic ice marked with a red and white barbershop pole and topped with a little metal ball earth. The actual type of magnetism present on Earth is similar to a ring magnet found in loudspeakers, which have a central north pole with the opposite south pole being all points along the outer circumference. This perfectly describes the magnetism of our flat Earth, whereas the alleged source of magnetism in the globe model is emitted from a hypothetical molten magnetic core in the center of the ball, which they claim conveniently causes both poles to constantly move and thus forever evade independent verification at their 2 ceremonial poles. 5. Sundials and moondials. Sundials and moondials are devices which tell the time of day or night by casting shadows created from sun and moonlight onto numbered dials. The basic technology consists of a dial and some kind of rod or marker called a gnomon, which casts its shadow onto the dial. As the sun or moon move through the sky, the shadow aligns with demarcations marked on the dial to indicate the time. Globe believers claim that all sun and moon dials must be aligned parallel to the axis of Earth's rotation in order to remain accurate throughout the year. All this really means is that sun and moon dials must be correctly orientated to east and west, which has nothing to do with Earth being a rotating globe. In fact, there are huge, intricate, ancient stone sun and moon dials as old as 1500 BC all over the world, which still tell the time now down to the minute as perfectly as the day they were made. If the Earth, sun, and moon were truly subject to the number of contradictory revolving, rotating, wobbling, and spiraling motions claimed by modern astronomy, it would be impossible for these monuments to so accurately tell time without constant adjustment. Additionally, the angle of the gnomon must be adjusted in a way directly correlated to the latitude of the observer, using not spherical trigonometry, but simple, plain Euclidean geometry. The gnomon must point to true north, and its angle with the horizontal must be equal to the dial's geographical latitude. So a sundial designed for 40 degrees latitude must have the gnomon tilted exactly 40 degrees from the horizontal. If the same dial is moved to 45 degrees latitude, by simply tilting the sundial plane itself upward 5 degrees, it will continue to tell the correct time. If Earth were truly a sphere, rotating ellipses around the sun, such simple, plain Euclidean geometry would be useless. 6. Spirit levels. Spirit levels, also known as bubble levels, are instruments designed to show whether a surface is horizontally level or vertically plumb. The names spirit and bubble refer to an alcohol-based solution which, along with an air bubble and central markers, indicate when surfaces are horizontal or vertical. These leveling tools have been used in carpentry, construction, and surveying for nearly 4 centuries, with precision engineers' levels now accurate to within 1/1000th of an inch. If Earth were really a globe with 8 inches per mile squared downward spherical curvature, the datum lines adhered to by builders using spirit levels in large projects like pipelines, railways, bridges, canals, and tunnels would constantly deviate. In reality, however, such large projects are done without any allowance for curvature or deviation from established horizontal datum lines. The Suez Canal, for example, which connects the Mediterranean and Red Seas, was dug along a horizontal datum line 26 feet below sea level, passing through several lakes from one sea to the other, with the datum line and the water's surface running perfectly parallel over 100 miles. On a globe Earth of given proportions, the Suez Canal should curve downwards a full 6,600 feet from its initial horizontal datum line. Furthermore, the reason liquid with a bubble is used to determine level is because liquid molecules don't have the innate physical capability to stack upon each other, and so without any obstructions will naturally spread out to form a horizontal level surface. In other words, water itself, which covers over 70% of the world, is the ultimate leveling tool, and proof that Earth is not a globe. 7. Sextants. Sextants are navigational instruments which measure the angle between visible celestial objects, like the sun or a star, and the horizon. Using a system of mirrors, sextants allow navigators to align the reflected image of a celestial body with the horizon in order to measure its angle from a graduated arc. This measurement can then be used along with simple Euclidean plane geometry to determine one's latitude. All you do is measure the angle between the pole star and your local sea horizon, and that exact angle measured will be your latitude on Earth. This is because Polaris sits directly above the North Pole, giving a straight vertical. The sextant provides an angular reading, making it the hypotenuse angle of a triangle, and the flat, level surface of the Earth gives the second side of the triangle. Then, using plane trigonometry and the Pythagorean theorem, we have the simple calculation of 1 degree of latitude per 1 degree of arc. If Earth was actually a globe, such basic triangulation would be impossible, and much more complicated spherical trigonometry would have to be employed. Also, the reason the horizon is used as a baseline for sextant measurements is because, as its name implies, the horizon is always perfectly horizontal. If Earth were actually curved, it would be impossible to use the visible horizon as a straight baseline for measuring celestial altitudes. 8. Gyroscopes. Gyroscopes are precision instruments consisting of a wheel mounted inside 2 or 3 gimbals which provide pivoting support, allowing the wheel to rotate about a single axis. As the entire contraption moves and shifts angles, the gimbals will move and shift accordingly, but the inner wheel never changes its angle with respect to its initial reference frame. This unique property is called rigidity in space, meaning the inner wheel maintains its orientation and axis of rotation in relation to space and not to the surface of the Earth. This means that the base of a gyroscope set in motion with its axis in a vertical position, then placed on a table for 6 hours, should rotate 90 degrees if sitting upon a spinning globe Earth. As the globe turns under the gyroscope for 6 hours, the axis should slowly turn from vertical to horizontal. This experiment has been tested many times, with several full-length videos available online, and never does the gyroscope's vertical axis shift whatsoever. If the heliocentric model were true, not only would gyroscopes detect the alleged 1,000-mile-per-hour spin of the globe, but also the 67,000-mile-per-hour revolution around the Sun, the entire solar system's 500,000-mile-per-hour spiral through the Milky Way galaxy, and the entire galaxy's million-plus-mile-per-hour journey through the universe. Since these hypothetical motions never register on precision gyroscopes, it is clear that they, just like the spinning globe they're based on, do not exist. Furthermore, gyroscopes are also the technology behind inertial guidance systems and airplane artificial horizon indicators. When military jets are performing loops, barrel rolls, and other dogfighting maneuvers, the artificial horizon allows pilots to easily see their exact orientation relative to Earth without having to rely on looking out the window. If Earth was truly a sphere, by simply flying level, airplane artificial horizon indicators should show a steady decline unless pilots constantly correct their altitudes downwards so as not to fly straight off into so-called outer space. For example, a pilot traveling 500 miles per hour over a globe Earth 3,959 miles in radius would have to descend an average of 2,777 feet, or over half a mile per minute. Otherwise, in 1 hour's time, the plane would be 31.5 miles higher than desired. 9. Telescopes, periscopes, and zoom cameras. Telescopes are devices composed of lenses and/or curved mirrors for magnifying and viewing distant objects. Similarly, periscopes use several mirrors, a prism, and/or advanced fiber optics to magnify and view distant objects over or around obstacles that prevent direct line-of-sight observation. Modern zoom cameras also use multiple lenses for the purpose of magnifying and viewing distant objects. By using these technologies, we can consistently observe objects at incredibly long distances, far beyond what would be possible if Earth was actually a globe of given proportions. By inputting the observer height and distance viewed into an Earth curvature calculator, it is easy to check how much a target should be obstructed on a globe Earth. For example, it is often possible to see the Chicago skyline from sea level 60 miles away across Lake Michigan. In 2015, after photographer Joshua Nowicki photographed this phenomenon, several news channels quickly claimed his picture to be a superior mirage, an atmospheric anomaly caused by temperature inversion. While these certainly do occur, the skyline in question was facing right side up and clearly seen, unlike a hazy, illusory mirage, and on a ball Earth 3,959 miles in radius should be a full 2,400 feet below the horizon. The current record-breaking longest-distance zoom photograph recently captured Pic Gaspard from Pic de Finestrelles, a whopping 275 miles away, with an observer height of approximately 9,000 feet, from which, based on correct curvature calculations, the entire 12,740-foot mountain should be invisible behind nearly 6 miles of curved Earth. More recently, infrared zoom cameras have been used at high altitudes to capture lakes, mountains, and other landmarks up to an incredible 1,000 miles away. Telescopes were also used in Royal Astronomical Society President George Airy's famous 19th century experiment known as Airy's failure, which failed to confirm Earth's alleged motion, and instead proved the opposite. By first filling a telescope with water to slow down the speed of light inside, then calculating the tilt necessary to get the starlight directly down the tube, Airy planned to measure the speed of the telescope, and thereby the speed of the Earth, by extrapolating the amount of tilt needed to keep the starlight coming in straight. The experiment would go down in history and forever be known as Airy's failure, however, because every time he repeated it, Airy found the starlight was already coming in the correct angle, with no change necessary, proving that the stars move relative to a stationary Earth, and not the other way around. 10. Lighthouses. Lighthouses are towers built with a system of lamps and lenses to cast light for long distances, serving as a beacon and navigational aid at sea. The great distance from which various lighthouse lights around the world are visible at sea far exceeds what should be possible on a globe of given proportions. For example, the Dunkirk light in southern France, at an altitude of 194 feet, is visible from a boat 10 feet above sea level, 28 miles away. Spherical trigonometry dictates that if Earth was a globe with the given curvature rate, this light should be hidden 190 feet below the horizon. The Port Nicholson light in New Zealand is 420 feet above sea level and visible from 35 miles away, where it should be 220 feet below the horizon. The Agaro light in Norway is 154 feet above high water and visible from 28 statute miles, where it should be 230 feet below the horizon. The light at Madras on the Esplanade is 132 feet high and visible from 28 miles away, where it should be 250 feet below the line of sight. The Cordonan light on the west coast of France is 207 feet high and visible from 31 miles away, where it should be 280 feet below the line of sight. The light at Cape Bonavista, Newfoundland is 150 feet above sea level and visible at 35 miles, where it should be 491 feet below the horizon. The lighthouse steeple of St. Botolph's Parish Church in Boston is 290 feet tall and visible from over 40 miles away, where it should be hidden a full 800 feet below the horizon. The Isle of Wight lighthouse in England is 180 feet high and can be seen up to 42 miles away, a distance at which it should fall 996 feet below line of sight. The Cape Legulas lighthouse in South Africa is 33 feet high, 238 feet above sea level, and can be seen for over 50 miles. If the world was a globe, this light would fall 1,400 feet below an observer's line of sight. And finally, the lighthouse at Port Said, Egypt, at an elevation of only 60 feet, has been seen an astonishing 58 miles away, where, according to modern astronomy, it should be 2,182 feet below the line of sight. The existence, use, and efficacy of these various tools and technologies outright disproves and debunks the delusion that we live upon a heliocentric spinning globe, and confirms what common sense and our everyday experience tells us, that we live on a geocentric, fixed and stationary, level plane.